And good morning. This is Heather Van Wild with Raindrop Works. Um, yeah, Rev. The live stream will still be up after. I am also recording so that I can trim out all this pre stuff for those who don't want to hear the chatting. So that's not going to be a problem. Um, I wanted to have some time to let things get situated and make sure that I don't have any stream issues or anything like that, so. Oh, that window is still up, huh? Do I have my auto refresh function still running? Oh, thanks. This is actually not the audio that I'm planning on using during the stream itself. It just happens to be that my wireless goes through batteries like crazy, and I didn't want to kill batteries in the next half hour or anything. And that's what happened. That was off. Okay, so yeah, at the moment the clerk has not turned on WebEx yet, so there's nothing for us to actually see. Um, I have a script refreshing the page, so as soon as it goes live, I can actually log in and see stuff. Mm. Yeah, that lighting flicker I have been having issues with for weeks, and yeah, I was doing a little Minecraft earlier this morning. I've been up since about 4 o'clock, um, and I realized now I'm just not gonna get any more decent sleep, so I might as well be productive in other ways. Got that. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and eesh, that's not exactly where I want it. Nope, too far back. Yeah, that's better. Go. Hey, Holo. Where'd the batteries go? Oh, I was looking through stuff on my desk earlier, and I found notes from the last hearing they had before the trial, and I actually found in here my notes. Swinney sent jail letter to Chauvin, and Westover wants it struck from the evidence. So, yeah, I don't know how early I knew about it, but I know that it 100% came up as far as um, the state wanting to use it as evidence. It's like we said before. I mean, he seems very convinced that he was completely right, and yeah, I just don't know that anything has significantly changed between his between sentencing or between conviction and now. Um, we know that Meg McCain is not going to be giving her witness statement orally, but she did submit a letter to the court. Um, we don't know what Jason Britton plans to do as far as a victim statement. He may appear remotely. I don't anticipate him coming into town um, with things that he's dealing with, so I don't think we'd have to worry about, or that he would be in person giving his statement if he chooses to give one, but he may do it remotely, or he may as a former evangelical, I have thoughts. I have many thoughts, and most of them are not appropriate at this moment. Oh, there's the batteries. I'm just going to preemptively replace all the batteries in the wireless gear. This container was full at the beginning of the month, and it's already over half gone. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm I don't want to get too far into the religious weeds here, but I have found that the Jesus that I read about growing up and the Jesus that is espoused by people in this country are two very different people. I mean, that's a discussion, I'm definitely fine with weighing in on more like outside of this stream, maybe in another stream, definitely like um DMs on Twitter, I do have a Discord server down in the description. If people here use Discord and want to join that server. Probably take a peek. I know there's been a whole bunch of other stuff that's been going on um, today. We have the Supreme Court is making rulings about a few different abortion related things. I'm sure that's going to be definitely driving attention. Um, we have that Potter trial that was talked about briefly last night. Um, right when I was getting off stream last night, we had the news officially break about the civil lawsuit against Andy No for copyright infringement, which I had known about before, but there was an embargo. I wasn't able to say anything about it at the time, so I do plan to try to dig more into that this weekend. Modern Amish. Interesting. I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania, so I'm familiar with more familiar with the Amish culture out there, which is, again, the traditional. So. Yeah, those things don't seem to mix very well to me. But yeah, I've had my own history. I mean, transgender person in an evangelical family, yeah, that didn't go over well either. Hutterite. That is one I have not heard before. Okay, so okay, only about 50,000 total, but okay, probably because of their location, since looks like, according to Wikipedia, almost all of them are in Western Canada and Upper Great Plains of the U.S. So yeah, that is definitely interesting. Okay. Honestly, my only experience in Canada was a day trip to Toronto when I was younger. Yes, let's... Oh, there was a password? Oops. Agree. Uh, yeah, I had some ideological reasons why I decided to not try to move out of the country. Um, okay. The court has opened up WebEx, so I am getting ready to do the testing here. Or to start setting up the shoot. That is, I forgot I need to see to make sure that. Yeah, eventually I'm gonna look at getting passport, at least just for ease in traveling, since Oregon doesn't, the cost for a real ID in Oregon is like, for a little bit more I could get a full passport and be able to go out of the country. So okay. So we have a video feed, but we don't have anyone in the room yet. I need to I want to double check here really quick and see. I gotta check my notes. Because we've got a video feed of courtroom 8B, and I just want to make sure that that is the courtroom that the sentencing is actually going to be in. Let's see. Yeah, because 9C and 11D were the observation rooms. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that is not what I wanted. Move to stage. Remove from stage. There we go. Haha. We are getting somewhere. Names in video. Hide. Close that. Close it all the way. Oh, yeah, because... Okay, yeah, that's right. It looks like unless the clerk moves the camera around, we may not get a good view of... Oh, wait, no, actually we might. I was just thinking we may not get a good view of Mr. Swinney, but Usually they put the defense on the side that has the door in the wall, because that's where they bring the the defendants that are in custody, and they want to have them right next to the door. So yeah, we could actually have a view of him just right there in the right off to the side. Yep, there we go. There's Mr. Westover. It turned out he just moved. In Multnomah County, we have two different public defender organizations, and he just apparently went from one to the other. Oh my god. Fine. My phone is going on Do Not Disturb. Let's remember where it is. It was still on Do Not Disturb from. I never remember to turn Do Not Disturb back on when I leave the courthouse. Okay. Um, Double checking, but yeah, they're setting up the observation rooms right now. I don't know what this chat is, but and why it won't let me close it. I think I'm good to go to. They started adding in the other observers to the call, and one of them I can't kick off the stage, which is annoying, but yeah, the Twitch chat is pretty empty, but and I'm hoping to be able to handle things as it is, but having other people around just in case is not a bad thing. 8:56. One of the problems that we run into is jail transport can get delayed sometimes. In fact, the hearing before the trial started, we had a problem where Swinney's transport was like an hour late getting there from Inverness, and that just holds everything up. So many videos. Oh, I like this. Okay. I just got it to full screen a little bit of this so I can get a little more. I'm just trying to eke out every pixel of this that I can get for people. There we go. Yeah, that's Mr. Westover. He was the primary attorney for the defense in this trial. Um, and then the court clerk has been wandering around as well. This was actually, as far as I know, his last case with this organization because, like, literally the day after the trial finished, he moved to a different public defender office and he had to get permission to come back for this sentencing hearing. Um, Hell of a case to go out on, honestly. He he fought pretty hard, I will say. Um, and there is I'm blanking her name. Doll? No, no. I can look it up here in a second. Like Mega. I should be better at this, but I've got it in that court filing from yesterday. Come on. Mega Desai. And they were both with Multnomah Defenders. He transferred to Multnomah Public Defender. Okay, I'm going to guess that what he just handed to the court clerk is a motion or a filing, basically trying to refute the sentencing recommendations and give excuses why his client should have a lesser sentence. Actually, I just talked to him the other day. That's a journalist that's been, or a photojournalist, and he's been also covering a lot of this stuff. Gonna I just sent a message asking if there's any chance that the camera can be moved slightly so we can see the state table. I don't know if they're going to see it or if they're going to be able to do it, but yeah, that was a typo I had from last night. Which also good morning. We are getting close to being ready to start. We haven't had any audio from the courtroom yet. Um, so I don't know if there's any delay waiting for Mr. Swinney to get transferred over here. The judge is probably back in chambers reviewing. The defense just gave some paperwork, which was probably supporting documentation for their view on sentencing, which we have not gotten to see yet. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the wireless mic because I think it's got a little better sound. I do not know what they're doing. And why There we go. Okay, so it does look like there's going to be a presentation from the state. Um, I'm not sure that I'm going to worry about putting, trying to get a close-up view of this because honestly, even with the full screen picture, I can only guess that we're looking at one of his social media posts. I can't even confirm. Yeah, they're going to be touching back on statements that were made during the trial as well as evidence that was presented. Some of this was already touched on last night in the sentencing memorandum that the state filed. So they basically give the judge a brief of what they're asking, how the law supports what they're asking for, so that they can kind of streamline the process when it comes to the hearing because the judge already has a rough idea and it's usually just more of clarifying things. Which is honestly why courtroom dramas on TV get it very wrong because there it's all about the drama and the shock and everything. And in reality, it's more of mundane paperwork, and the hearings are more just hashing out misunderstandings than gotcha moments. Okay, I think we're probably getting closer to ready to start. Yep, here he comes. And yes, they do leave the handcuffs off while he's in here. Um, Even if he was to try anything, there's three deputies that are going to be in the room at all times, and that's normal.
0067. Nathan Vasquez, representing the District Attorney's Office in the state of Oregon. For the record, my bar number is 014437. Last name is V as in Victor, ASQUEZ.
Thank you for fixing
Mr. Reed Schweitzer is here present on behalf of the District Attorney's Office as well. And Mr. Swinney is present. He is in custody. He's represented by Mr. Joseph Westover and Ms. Megan Desai. We are prepared to proceed to sentencing at this time. I do have one question for the court. Is that during the presentation, may the parties remove their mask when speaking?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, Your Honor. Joseph Westover, Westover. My bar number is 141275. We're ready to proceed this morning. I'll allow my co-counsel to put her name on the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. Megan Desai, DESAI, bar number 141441. All right. Good morning, counsel. Good morning, Mr. Swinney. So the parties are aware. I reviewed the pre-sentence investigation, state's memorandum, and defense memorandum regarding sentencing. Excuse me, the state's response to the defense memorandum regarding sentencing, as well as just the support letters from Mr. Swinney's friends and family that arrived this morning. So that is what I have reviewed in preparation for today. Mr. Vasquez, I guess I'll hear first from the state regarding your recommendations.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. I'm going to begin with the two victim impact statements, which the victims requested be read in court.
Okay.
The first one is by Ms. Megan Stewart. Her statement is as follows. First off, I am a very positive person with no aspirations of public attention or becoming a political voice. When the situation arose, having been out of the country for so many years, I didn't know the full extent of the issues or politics involved. I was attacked by a man completely unprovoked. Then spent weeks practically begging for this crime to be acknowledged. When the indictment finally came, I figured that was enough for me. But then I began receiving death threats online as a direct result of Mr. Swinney's arrest. Dozens of posts discussed how to hunt me down, where to find me, what I look like, and how to kill me. I was called a terrorist, a radical left bitch, and a member of Antifa, a word I had to look up. None of which is true, but truth is irrelevant to those who romanticize political violence. In addition to the stress and fear created, the week of the trial pushed my anxiety to the brink. The day before the trial started, my father died. The day I took the stand was my mother's birthday, which she spent alone in a mortuary. When I left the courtroom, I was informed a new social media post went live that not only furiously insulted my participation in the case, but included an address connected to my name, which was my mother's home address. This day was almost unbearable for me. All this comes down to one simple fact. Alan didn't witness or perceive a physical political threat from me, then he decided was justified to attack me. Alan attacked me and then justified it by inventing a story about my political views. While neither of those would be justification to attack someone, the latter possesses a great danger to everyone in the city. It shows that nobody is safe from harm. Because the violence Alan and those like him enact on people can always be justified to them, even if it requires lying about the person to create that justification. While I see little value in caging a person as a response to crimes like this, as it does not offer rehabilitation, I don't see Mr. Swinney as open or able to recognize the need for him to change. I don't see him acknowledging that he is a danger to everyone, not just his political enemies. I don't see him concluding innocent bystanders are not acceptable collateral damage. No amount of time in a cage will change him, and his ability to radicalize others by playing a victim makes me feel less safe. So, if it can help me in any way, I would request Mr. Swinney publicly demand his supporters leave myself and my family alone in exchange for me requesting he receive no jail time for anything related to me. But as I don't see that happening, I will trust the court to provide a fair and suitable sentence. That concludes Ms. Stewart's statement. Your Honor, I will now read Mr. Jason Britton's statement. And Mr. Britton requested that a social media post by Mr. Alan Swinney be displayed while he reads this as well. Alan Swinney, in my humble opinion, is lucky to have only 11 charges from his campaign of hatred and violence in the city of Portland. His actions literally beg the question of why he's not currently facing federal charges for conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism, or even on the local level, a single charge for vigilante justice. On a controversial Parler social media post he made in the week leading up to his assault on me on August the 15th, Alan had this to say about himself. His current choice of career and his intentions for coming to Portland. Quote, and this is from the social media Parler post, "I get bad people arrested. That's what I do. I go to rallies where I know lefties will be coming to attack patriots. I give them a shot with me first. When they get violent, I subdue them. And the video evidence has always been enough to have them carted off to jail or to the hospital. I do this for a living. I raise funds to do it. The money is incredible. I bet in the last 2 years I've raised probably $10,000. I fought with lefties all across the country with that $400 a month. I've sent 83 of them to the jail or prison with it. I figure it costs the left at least $2,000 every time I get one of them arrested. That means to the 10K investment I've done at least $166K worth of damage to the left. I've recently received threats from patriots, more specifically Seattle PBs, that's quotes for Proud Boys. Warning, if you come out there fucking around, I won't play with you. I'll treat you like the Antifa and trust in one thing. I know how to make their lives miserable. I didn't come here to play with you." End of quote. To me, that doesn't sound like someone who came to Portland with the best of intentions, as his friends would lead you to believe. While his cause may seem just and sincere to an average reader, when compared beside his actions, one begins to see a bigger picture unfold. He came here to commit violence against people whose politics contrast with his own far-right ideology. He even goes on to make thinly veiled threats to commit violence against people on his own political ideology that disagree with at the end of his post. Not only that, he did all of this with the help of money that he collected from donors all over the country. This was obviously not his first rodeo. In his own words, he's done this before in other cities, and he's been doing it over 2 years before the time of my assault. Taking his words at face value, that would mean he's doing this well before the controversial post that swept the nation after the murder of George Floyd. Where was he doing this before Portland and even before 2020? Who were his targets prior to BLM and Antifa? He was allowed to get away with this. Why was he allowed to get away with this for so long? These are all the questions I pray you ask yourself when you determine the length of his sentence for his current 11 charges. It would be difficult to hold him accountable for his past choices now, but it's not too late to prevent him from repeating those actions in the future. While Alan may not have planned each transgression individually before they transpired, he had a premeditated formula of aggression in his mind that he anticipated would invoke a physical response from political dissidents without getting him into trouble, thus justifying whatever, quote, self-defense, end quote, claim he would make later. Like a schoolyard bully, Alan literally came to Portland with the intent to push protesters to their limits, physically, mentally, and spiritually, until they became outraged enough to stand up for themselves, all with the intent of gathering footage he would later use to play victim when the dust settled, and put protesters in jail, or worse, with his slanted narrative and careful camera angles, all knowing full well that many of his victims do not trust the police and therefore would not file charges in the process. Unfortunately for Mr. Swinney, he made a grave mistake in his quote-unquote accidental assault upon me. He never anticipated that despite my opinions on the failing American justice system, that I would in fact use that failing justice system against him. When he realized that I was cut from a different cloth than his usual victims, he made every attempt to label me as a domestic terrorist to all of his fan base. Since that time, I have received countless threats on my life. Despite those odds, I still proceeded with this trial in hopes that the Portland protest community, much of which condemned me for going to the police to begin with, would finally see some real justice against those who would come to our city in the hope of silencing their freedom of speech with acts of violence, coercion, and intimidation. Frankly, with the help of Nathan Vasquez and the Multnomah County DA, we worked harder than our own Portland Police Bureau to bring Allen's actions to light in open court. Please don't invalidate those efforts by giving Allen an easy out. End quote. Your Honor, I have some brief statements I'd like to present to the court. As the court has stated, you've read the sentencing memorandum. We certainly stand on that. And the state's request is that Mr. Allen Swinney receive 130 months in prison. This day has been a long time in coming. Long before August 15th, Allen Swinney was building to this very day. He traveled around the country looking for a fight. He came to Portland because he knew he would get that fight. To sum it all up, he is a white nationalist vigilante cowboy. And what's the most troubling part about that statement, that vigilante cowboy, he actually enjoys that label. Anyone here present in the courtroom today, he's the one person that enjoys that label the most, being called a vigilante cowboy. And that right there represents the entire problem with Mr. Swinney, is that he is completely unable to appreciate what he did wrong and why it's so dangerous to this community and why it was so dangerous to himself. His extreme beliefs propel him to engage in this activity, which he believes in his heart of hearts is a civil war. And he feels he must carry that forward and truly endanger the lives of everyone that he's going to come into contact with at one of these situations. He represents an extreme danger to the community. He travels around looking for this fight, really just looking for anyone to oppose him so that he, dressed in all of his battle gear, prepared to do whatever LARPing type activity he believes is appropriate. He can bait them in so that he can punch on them, beat on them, spray them in the face with bear mace, or shoot them in the face with a paintball gun. He actually wants this civil war. It's something that, for whatever holes are in his life, he feels like this fills that need. Make no mistake, he came to Portland for that fight. Because Portland was the epicenter in 2020 of the Black Lives Matter movement, he came here to confront it. Because he wanted that fight, he knew he would get it. Yes, he started small. He was out and around in the surrounding areas in some of the smaller communities in Oregon, trying to gather up people. He was looking to build a militia of armed people to come in to the downtown core of Portland to engage in a horrific conflict. He started small on August the 15th. There were just a few of them. But that, on the 15th, quickly turned violent. He assaulted numerous people. He injured, hurt people. Mr. Britton's eye injury, when we talk about that count of assault in the second degree, that is more than just a significant injury under the law. It's a serious physical injury. It's something that he still suffers from to this very day. And while August the 15th was bad, it was a horrible day, and certainly a dark day for Portland, one man relished in that. Despite the fact that he had hurt people on the 15th, despite the fact that one of his cohorts, Skylar Jurgen, fired a gun towards a crowd on that very day, in that very melee, despite all of that, he decided that was a great day for him and that he was going to take it to the next level. And so here we have two very separate and distinct episodes, the 15th of August and the 22nd of August. And the 22nd was an all-out riot. It was an unabated riot. And that man was a provocateur, the catalyst, and one of the leaders of that riot. He went hands-on and hurt people. He helped direct other people to hurt people. He brought that to the city. He wanted it. It was the fulfillment of what he saw as his purpose. And it came just an eyelash away from a mass shooting. When he pulled that gun, he drew the hammer back. His finger was on the trigger, ready to fire at a crowd of people. It is shocking that someone else, because as we've seen, lots of people carry guns, someone else didn't shoot at him, that there wasn't a wild shootout. And the sad reality is that here in Portland, we still experience this political violence. We had it again this year, really on the exact anniversary of his 2020 event. On August the 22nd, 2021, we had another wild and outrageous riot out in Northeast Portland by the Proud Boys being confronted by Antifa. It was a very similar type of scenario, except it just wasn't in the downtown core. And I bring that up because that is what makes Mr. Swinney so dangerous, is that he wants this. He craves it. He seeks it out. He promotes it. And through it all, if he were out today, he wouldn't do a single thing differently, except perhaps to do it more, to bring more people, to bring more guns, to bring more violence. And that is the true danger of him. He should receive 130 months because of the injuries he inflicted, because of the danger he caused, because he used a firearm to point at people unlawfully. He should receive 130 months for that. The mitigation in this case is small. The aggravating factors are overwhelming. And the state's here requesting that you give him that sentence as outlined in the state's sentencing memorandum. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Westover.
Good morning, Your Honor. I think it's appropriate for you, in order to give a considered decision to a sentence in this case, to understand Alan Swinney from before he arrived in Portland. He was born in 1970 in Texas. Son of, his mother was a housewife, stayed at home with him and his 3 siblings. His father was a minister, but his father also engaged in several extramarital affairs that resulted in other children and ultimately resulted in the divorce of his parents when Alan was about 6 years old. In some of the letters that we submitted to Your Honor, you see notes from members of his family who indicate that he is welcome back in Texas. They want him to come back there. He has places to stay. He has opportunities for employment with his family down there. His sister indicated and his aunt indicated that the divorce was particularly hard on Mr. Swinney. He, instead of graduating high school, when he was 17 years old, he took the test and received his GED so that he could go enlist in the United States Army. He did so out of a great love for his country. Several members of his family have served. I believe it was one of his uncles. He's a Vietnam veteran himself. Mr. Swinney enrolled in the military. He was first deployed. He did basic training in Oklahoma, and he was first deployed in Bamberg, Germany. And at that time in Germany, he met a woman, Heike, who you saw a statement from, a statement of support for him. He married her. That deployment was for 2 years. Usually deployments are for 2 years, at least they were back then. He came back to the United States, and ordinarily when somebody is in between deployments, at that time anyway, they would get about 30 days off. During that 30 days, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and Mr. Swinney was notified that he would be tapped to go to Saudi Arabia. So at the end of that 30 days, instead of being able to have his wife accompany him to wherever his new deployment was, he went to Saudi Arabia, where he was a part of Desert Shield. When Desert Shield turned into Desert Storm, he was a part of Desert Storm. He was part of he went into Iraq. One of the people that he served in the military with, Robert Casson, I'm not going to read his whole statement, but one of the things he said was that Allen has seen a lot of death, but has also saved lives, including a rescue mission, helping the 101st Airborne Division. There was another incident where their crew, Allen's crew, pulled into position not realizing that there were Iraqi soldiers in a bunker underneath them. As part of the reactionary force, Allen crawled into the bunker to tell the Iraqi soldiers to exit the bunker. For his service, he was later diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, or is not kind to the psyche, is what Allen has told me. Notwithstanding that, during his time in the Army, he was promoted 4 times. His last rank was a Specialist E4, and during his service, he was awarded the Army Good Conduct Medal, Army Service Ribbon, Overseas Service Ribbon, National Defense Service Medal, Southwest Asia Service Medal with 2 Bronze Service Stars. When he returned home, he left the military a few months early so that he could begin his life with his family, bring Heike over. That marriage did not turn out. But what he did is he helped people that he was in the military with find employment. He helped his friend Robert, who I quoted earlier, get work in the several times. And what Allen did after he moved from the military was he began working in the oil field, and he would work on oil rigs, etc. After working in that industry for some time, on one particular day, he was essentially manning a station over a pit that had a bunch of crude oil in it, and at a certain point, that crude oil caught on fire. Allen was very badly burned. He had 2nd and 3rd degree burns, over 26% of his body. He was in the hospital for 8 weeks. He could not return to work for 6 months. But what he did during that time is he received partial disability as a result of those. And after that, he used the money from the GI Bill as well as his partial disability, and he went back to school and got himself a degree enabling him to work in the medical toxicology field, medical technician. In that field, and we've got some statements from folks that he worked with in that field, he was promoted several times. During this time as well, he was married to his then wife, whose name was Kim, and he allowed Robert Casson again to come live with him. He was open and inviting to everything. At that time, he was living with his own wife, his son, his wife's son, as well as a rotating array of family members of his wife. His home was open. It was a place where people could come if they needed a place to stay. A couple of hops back and forth, I guess, between oil work and medical toxicology. In 2005, he ended up returning to the oil industry, where he worked until 2018. I'll talk about an experience of mine right now. In 2012 or so, I served, when I was a law student, I served as a legal observer at a May Day parade. And we did receive some training prior to that parade. And one of the things we were told about was to watch out for a certain group of people. We were told to watch out for people that came dressed in all black, hiding their identity, because those people were people who were known to come and cause disruption. And the reason that was important, the reason we needed to keep our eyes open for those people, was because May Day has taken on the mantle recently of being symbolic of the labor movement and immigration. And as such, it is understood or believed that there are a lot of people at those May Day rallies that have sensitive immigration issues. And so the objective was to make sure, limit as much as possible police contact with people. We were warned about those people because those people there were there to aggravate the police, were there to cause property damage based on their own agenda. Those are the same people that Alan began to see when he would observe videos on the internet in approximately 2016, or descendants of. In 2016, Alan got essentially the last job that he would end up working. He was an operator of tank batteries. It's in the oil industry. Essentially, he's monitoring these large tanks that, as they fill up, they need somebody to monitor them to make sure they're not overflowing. This was an easy job. It actually involved, as he describes it, approximately 5 minutes of work per hour. And at that time, he spent his spare time watching videos on the internet. That was approximately 2016. In 2016 as well, just as a matter of historical note, following the election of Donald Trump, we ended up with a surge in Antifa. And Portland did become the epicenter of that surge. Those are the same people that this year, after almost a decade of violence in the community, Ted Wheeler begged the citizens of the city of Portland to unmask. If you think your neighbor is involved in this group, you need to call the police. That's where they're at with this group. And this is the group that Alan Swinney saw on the internet. I asked him to, what do you specifically remember? And he told me there was some accounts where he saw a woman who went to express pride in her country and she was waving the American flag. And he saw somebody from that group grab the flag from her, rip it out of her hands, and in so doing, while she was trying to keep it, she ended up getting the flag caught around her and ended up falling to the ground, apparently injuring herself. He described a video where he saw a United States military veteran, World War II era, who was on a scooter, who was out in support of some conservative cause, and he saw that person be attacked. He saw people being struck with objects. He saw people, both poles, weapons essentially, and he saw projectiles, the same types of projectiles that we saw on some of those videos that were deemed admissible at trial. And the final straw really for him, while he was watching, was at a rally in 2018 in Portland. He saw somebody from that group throw a bomb into a group of unarmed demonstrators. And it was at that moment where he made the decision that he was going to be somebody that would stand in between that group and those folks who wanted to express their beliefs, their opinions, express using their constitutional right to freedom, assembly, that sort of thing. Alan's life, the history of Alan's life, he is seen as essentially a protector. He served in the military to protect his country. And what I see in Alan, in representing him, is a deep love for his country, grave and honest concern for the circumstances that we see ourselves in now, and someone who is quite prone to hyperbole. A lot was made during this trial of Alan Swinney's posts on social media. For example, one of those posts said that if they think first of all, they're never going to indict me on this. But if they do, if they think I'm going to turn myself in, they're crazy. I'm paraphrasing. Well, when he was indicted, Alan Swinney turned himself in. Alan Swinney has no criminal history but for one misdemeanor offense in the 90s, I believe, the 80s or 90s. Alan Swinney is a law-abiding person, and we're in this situation because of his perception of what was going on. And ultimately, this jury ruled that what Mr. Swinney did on August 15th of 2020 and August 22nd of 2020 was a step too far. So when he saw that final video, he actually, his first rally he ever attended was here in Portland, because that's where that bomb was thrown. And he showed up with the intent to stand in between people that would be attacked and those who would attack them. There's been a lot of discussion about Mr. Swinney going all over the country and doing this, but Alan Swinney has never once gone to somebody else's protest or demonstration. He's only ever gone to stand in between those two people. The first time that he went, and this was from his testimony or trial, he wasn't wearing anything. He wasn't wearing any pads, he wasn't wearing any helmet. Those became necessity as standing in between those two groups ended up with him being subject to violence. After that first event in Portland, the folks there invited him. We've got another one going on in Seattle. Why don't you come with us? We really like you. And then from there, Denver, then Austin. He's continuing to get invited along. And at some point, his rhetoric changed. We started seeing then the types of posts that we were seeing. But that didn't change. The fact that we have these hyperbolistic statements on social media, the internet not being a place where people bite their tongue, we see those start to emerge, and those are, as Mr. Swinney is essentially falling deeper and deeper into this community. Somebody is teaching him this, somebody is persuading him to engage in this. I'm not talking about this to say that Alan Swinney was justified in doing what he was doing. I'm talking about this because it's important to understand the entirety of the circumstances that led us here. And we believe that those circumstances, first of all, Mr. Swinney's not just military service, but combat military service is, quite frankly, something that, from what I have seen in this case, I think that that service is intimately connected with Alan Swinney falling into what he fell into. And on August 15th, first of all, we saw videos during the trial. I saw in that video 2 men holding paintball guns. 2 men shot at the gentleman in the white shirt that was running up behind Alan. One of them was Alan Swinney. The other one was who Mr. Vasquez mentioned before, Skylar Jernigan. Skylar Jernigan was not charged at all, as far as I can tell, for the shooting of the paintball, but he was charged with, after the groups went into the parking garage, and while the groups were leaving, Skylar Jernigan didn't just pull a pistol, he pulled it and he shot it. And he was charged with a similar offense that Alan Swinney is in count A, unlawful use of a weapon with a firearm. Your Honor knows that Skylar Jernigan received a sentence of probation because I understand Your Honor sentenced Skylar Jernigan. With regard to that, that is a substantial and compelling reason. You don't even need a substantial and compelling reason to depart from a 60-month sentence on the unlawful use of a weapon with a firearm. You just need to find that Mr. Swinney has not had a ORS 1616105A departure before, and it's true he hasn't because he has no criminal history. You should depart to his natural grid block. In that case, my guess is it would be a 6A based on if Your Honor is finding 2 separate criminal episodes. With regard to the Measure 11 offense, we do stand on our motion that sentencing Alan Swinney to 70 months in prison based on an assault 2 on the theory of transferred intent, as it occurred in this case, would violate the proportionality, disproportionate sentencing that Article 1, Section 16 and the 8th Amendment prohibit. I think Mr. Schweitzer's response in that regard mischaracterizes what my argument is. I am not saying that Alan Swinney should be convicted of an assault in the 4th degree. I am saying that the elements that we know that the jury found, it was that Alan Swinney intentionally shot at one person, and as a result, another person was injured. The jury form itself is written in the passive voice. This is an accident. It is at worst reckless, and we know that with regard to Jason Britton, Alan Swinney did not act intentionally or knowingly because the jury said he didn't. That right there is enough to declare a 70-month sentence unconstitutional, and what would be proportionate in that case would be up to 364 days in jail, which is the maximum that could be imposed on Class A misdemeanor assault in the 4th degree. The other reason that you should depart from a Measure 11 sentence in with regard to the assault in the 2nd degree with Jason Britton as the victim is ORS 137.712. The state in their memorandum indicate, and they argue here, that Jason Britton suffered a serious physical injury. In order to prohibit a departure there, he would have needed to experience a significant physical injury, which is, we don't have a lot on what that actually means. And I'm not disputing that Mr. Britton came in and testified under oath that he has problems with his eye to this day. I have a comment about the pre-sentence investigation. Pages 6, 7, and 8 talk about the scope of the crime. I got this 2 days ago. And Judge, I'm going to show it to you. It's page 6 right there. I've highlighted a portion of it. Page 7, I've highlighted a portion of it. And page 8, I've highlighted a portion. Those highlighted portions refer to discovery I never received. And one portion of it talks about how Jason Britton at one point made allegations that he didn't make on the stand. What that does is that creates serious questions about Jason Britton's credibility when it comes to just how long-lasting any injury to his eye is. For that reason, you cannot find that a significant physical injury occurred. There's a restitution request. There are appointments. I'll concede Jason Britton went to the eye doctor a few times, but there's nothing in here that substantiates that Mr. Britton suffered a significant physical injury, only that he went to the eye doctor. So the only account of the prolonged impairment of the use of a bodily organ is from him. For all of those reasons, Judge, we do believe that there are substantial and compelling reasons to depart from any gridlock or mandatory sentence. We would ask that Your Honor impose and suspend those sentences. I think you could probably sentence Mr. Swinney, who's been in custody since his arrest. It's been over a year. You could probably sentence Mr. Swinney concurrently to the max on all the misdemeanors, and he would be out. One of the things that Your Honor should take into account is it is my belief that we've been seeing rumblings. I haven't read it completely yet, but come April of next year, I understand that the Interstate Compact on adult offenders is going to make it exceedingly hard for somebody who does not already have a residence somewhere else, a pre-existing residence for a year. They're just going to be denied from the compact. So to the extent that any time spent after Mr. Swinney's incarceration ends, to the extent that he's going to want to go back to Texas, probably not going to be able to do that unless he makes that request prior to April of next year, is my understanding. For all of those reasons, we would ask for you to sentence Mr. Swinney to a period of probation appropriate for whatever gridlock he lands in, according to Your Honor's assessment of the 2 criminal episodes or 1 criminal episode. And just as a final note, I didn't include this in my my sentencing memorandum. I did talk about how the state's theory of the possess with intent to use unlawfully against another person. With regard to that, they can't prove it. There's been nothing suggested that there's a disruption in the possession of the paintball gun. I would ask for the UUWs with regard to the paintball gun to merge.
All right. So before I begin sentencing, I do want to take a moment to commend both parties for the work they did in the trial and the work they did to prepare for today. I think that this, and honestly, the sheriff's deputies as well, I think this trial had potential for disruption. None occurred. And I was extremely grateful to that as the judge of this case. Mr. Swinney, you have treated this case, this court, with respect, and I want to acknowledge that as well. You have a right, sir, to say anything to me that you would like to say, or rest on what Mr. Westover has said on your behalf.
I'll rest on what he's said on my behalf.
All right. Mr. Swinney, the evidence that was presented at this trial, summarized in the pre-sentence investigation and included in the state's memorandum, all continue to demonstrate a person who does not have remorse for what happened in August of 2020. I believe that Mr. Vasquez is correct, that sitting here today, you still believe you were justified in everything you did on those days. However, a jury heard all of that evidence and they disagreed with you. They heard your phone calls where you expressed no regret. They listened to your testimony where you continued to be defiant about the decisions that you made. The videos showing the incidents do not portray a person who is scared for himself or for those around him, but for a person who really pretty calmly and dispassionately used or threatened force, often with dangerous or deadly weapons. And while I even understand and agree with Mr. Westover that there were bad actors on both sides on both days, the fact is that you were not just reacting on those dates, you were also provoking. And you chose then to become one of those bad actors as well. And choices, as you know, have consequences. So I impose the following sentences in this case. On count 1, the attempted assault in the 4th degree, I imposed 90 days jail straight time with credit for time served and all other credits, waiving fines, fees, and assessments. On count 2, the unlawful use of mace in the 2nd degree, I will impose 180 days jail straight time with credit for time served and all other credits to be served concurrently with count 1, waiving fines, fees, and assessments. If I start going too fast, let me know. On count 3, attempted assault in the 2nd degree. I find the grid block for the attempted assault in the 2nd degree to be a 7H. I'm imposing the presumptive sentence of 36 months formal probation with all general conditions of probation. I will waive all fines, fees, and assessments. On
I apologize, Your Honor. One thing that I had forgot, and it was not in my memorandum, is that we received last night restitution information on count 4, or I'm sorry, count 5. Is that the assault too? So if the court would like that prior to the pronouncing sentencing, I can give that, or
yes, give me the restitution. Is that for Mr. Britton?
yes, it is, Your Honor.
All right, and what is he requesting?
The total amount is $348.80. It is for 3 medical visits to eye doctors. I have the documentation, and I provided that to defense counsel.
All right, and what is the defense position on the $348?
There hasn't been any showing that these are reasonable or necessary. All we have is bills. We would object to the imposition of restitution.
So, I do believe the case law requires some showing of reasonable and necessary for the medical appointments. What I am willing to do is give the state time. I can set over restitution for 90 days. We can actually put a date on the calendar. Let's get through the sentence and then we can
Certainly,
take
Your
that
Honor.
up.
Thank you.
All right. I believe I was at count 4.
Yep.
Unlawful use of a weapon. The grid block is 6H. I impose the presumptive sentence of 24 months formal probation with all general conditions of probation, waiving fines, fees, and assessments. On count 5, assault in the 2nd degree, I feel like some of the defense arguments in the defense memorandum are, I mean, effectively trying to relitigate or rehash in an untimely way the transferred intent issue. To the extent that it is timely, I guess I continue to we just disagree. I disagree with the defense contention that because this case was ultimately proved under a theory of transferred intent, that it must be treated instead as a reckless assault in the 4th degree. Mr. Swinney intended to commit the crime of assault in the 2nd degree. He committed the crime of assault in the 2nd degree, and therefore the sentence will be for assault in the 2nd degree. ORS 137700 sets forth the mandatory minimum sentence of 70 months for assault in the 2nd degree. ORS 137712 sets forth exceptions to that mandatory minimum. To be eligible for an exception in this case, the court would have to find a substantial and compelling reason to justify a lesser sentence. And specific to this particular charge, I would have to find that Mr. Swinney does not have a previous conviction for certain crimes, which he does not. That Mr. Britton was not physically injured by means of a deadly weapon. He was not. And that Mr. Britton did not suffer a significant physical injury. At trial, the uncontested evidence was that Mr. Britton testified that in the immediate moments following being shot, he could not see at all. That for at least 30 days after the incident, he experienced sensitivity to light, and that even at trial, more than a year later, his ability to focus using that eye was diminished. The long-term effects of the assault are evidence of a significant physical injury, potentially even, as the state alleges, a serious physical injury, but we were not talking about an assault 1 in this case. So I find ORS 137712 cannot apply because of the significant physical injury. I find, given the facts of this case, that ORS 137700 is constitutional as applied, and accordingly, I find Mr. Swinney is a 9H on the grid block. But because 137700 applies, he is sentenced to the Oregon Department of Corrections for a period of 7 months. 70 months, thank you. He shall receive credit for time served to be served concurrently with all of the other counts that I've sentenced him on so far. Thank you. I will waive all fines, fees, and assessments. To the extent it's helpful, and I have not heard the rumblings about the interstate compact law potentially being changed, but to the extent it is helpful, I would encourage the state to determine whether or not an interstate compact transfer to Texas would be in the best interest of any potential rehabilitation for Mr. Swinney, either during the period of his incarceration or as soon as practical after his release from custody. I do think that proximity to family members is something that can aid an individual in their rehabilitation. And so if going to Texas, even while incarcerated, is something that Mr. Swinney would like to pursue, this court would make a recommendation. Of course, it's entirely up to the Department of Corrections. What I did not write in my notes, the 9H, what is the post-prison term for the 9H? 3?
Yep.
Okay, so then, and that will be followed by a period of 3 years of post-prison supervision. All right, moving on to the events of August 22nd. I note that the state sentencing memorandum really just sort of said, oh, you can sentence him as an I to everything if you wanted. It really did not make a difference under what the state was proposing with regards to sentence. Nonetheless, I would like to be somewhat accurate in my reflection of what his grid blocks would be. It's possible, frankly, if we really wanted to, we maybe could have even slid him across the criminal history score with the August 15th incidents. I chose not to, and instead I just find that now, by the time we get to August 22nd, his criminal history score would be an A on the grid block. With regards to count 7, unlawful use of a weapon, Mr. Swinney is a grid block 6A, and I sentence him to the presumptive sentence of 30 months prison with credit for time served and all other credits to be served concurrently with the other counts in this case, followed by 24 months post-prison supervision and waiving all fines, fees, and assessments. On count 8, unlawful use of a weapon with a firearm, the grid block is 6A, but ORS 161610, the firearms minimum, applies. I find the events occurring, and I guess this also maybe goes a little bit to the defense argument that counts 4 and 7 should merge. I find that the events occurring on August 15th and August 22nd do not arise out of a continuous and uninterrupted course of conduct. However, even assuming that the defense argument that because Mr. Swinney believed he was engaged in a civil war, or rather that the state's theory of the case was such, I find that the unlawful use of a weapon with a firearm on August 22nd regarding multiple persons, and notably not Mr. Britton, was not a merely incidental violation of a separate statutory provision in the course of the commission of the assault in the second degree occurring on August 15th regarding victim Jason Britton. Furthermore, the UUW with a firearm caused a qualitatively different harm to different victims than the assault in the second degree. Therefore, on count 8, I sentence Mr. Swinney to 60 months prison. 10 months of that will be served concurrently and 50 months to be served consecutively to the other counts in this case. Mr. Swinney will be eligible for credit for time served and good time and work time on count 8. It will be followed by a post-prison supervision sentence of 60 months less time actually served, and I will waive all fines, fees, and assessments. On count 9, the menacing, I sentenced Mr. Swinney to 180 days jail straight time with credit for time served and all other credits to be served concurrently with count 1, waiving all the other counts, waiving all fines, fees, and assessments. Count 10, pointing a firearm at another I sentence him to 180 days jail straight time with credit for time served and all other credits to be served concurrently with all of the other counts, waiving all fines, fees, and assessments. Count 11, unlawful use of mace in the second degree, 180 days jail straight time with credit for time served and all other credits to be served concurrently with the other counts, waiving all fines, fees, and assessments. Count 12, assault in the fourth degree, 180 days jail straight time with credit for time served and all other credits to be served concurrently, waiving all fines, fees, and assessments. Mr. Swinney, because we're going to be taking up the restitution issue on another date and time.
Can I just have one moment to confer with my client on that, Judge?
Yes, okay, yeah, so you can ask him what I was going to ask him.
We have no objection to the imposition of the requested restitution on that count at this time, Judge.
All right.
Which number was that?
That's count 5. So we'll just order restitution to Jason Britton in the amount of $348.80, and I'll ask the state to prepare the supplemental restitution form. Mr. Swinney, I hope that you are able to get back to your family in Texas as soon as possible, whatever that may look like. I think that is going to be the best place for you in the long run. I wish you luck moving forward. I hope that in the future, if protests are ongoing in this country, which it certainly feels today like they will be, that you find a more constructive way to participate that doesn't involve endangering other people. Anything else?
Nothing further from the state. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Did you officially rule on my merger argument? I don't.
Well,
My argument is for those counts at this point, because of the theory of UUW that they imposed, it's a secondary argument that if you don't find that one entire criminal episode based on their theory as a whole, their theory as to the UUW is, as a matter of fact, one continuous course of action. Because of this notion of constructive possession, Mr. Swinney was in possession of that paintball gun every moment under this notion of constructive possession. The state didn't indicate any break, and so therefore those two counts should merge.
state want to be heard on that?
Your Honor, I think the court stated those reasons already on the record, but the clear break is that it was a week apart. I mean, that it's very apparent by the facts, by the indictment, that all of those things make it apparent that he had, as the court found, ample opportunity to consider his actions, reconsider all of that. While his motivation may have been the same, it does not change the fact that they were wildly broken up by 7 days.
Just as an example, I took the Max into work this morning. I'm still in possession of my car, which is at my house, under the law in Oregon.
Okay, I believe that the temporal break between August 15th and on August 22nd is sufficient that there can be 2 separate sentences imposed on counts 4 and 7. Are those the only ones that you argued should be merged? Okay.
Correct.
All right, anything else?
Nothing from defense.
All right. Thank you very much.
It'll just be a couple minutes, guys, before I get the orders for you to initial.
And Mr. Keenan, I'll need a little time to make sure I have the order filled out correctly for the restitution paperwork, obtaining addresses and things of that nature.
Sure, if you can just bring it back to me sometime today.
Certainly, will do.
And there should be some date in the back room
Back room.
on the wall.
I'll make sure to grab one on the way out. Thank you.
You can have a seat. It's gonna take a few minutes for.
But, so like the one thing I did.
No, no, so here's what it is. Count 5 is the assault, 7 months prison, and this one.
Okay, yeah.
50 months.
I mean, we're off the record anyway, so there's not going to be any legal stuff going. It's just going to be clarification questions, if anything. I think I kept pretty decent notes of what happened. He did get some reduced sentences, and I could swear that one of these was actually an increased sentence from what the state asked. And I want to double check after. Oh, perfect. They ended the video stream. So I am going to go ahead and pull up from last night the sentencing grid that we were talking about, so that everyone here can see what the judge was talking about. Oh, yeah, give me just a moment here. Testing. Okay, yeah, this should be a little bit better volume-wise. Yes, I finally got blocked by Andy, and I'm proud of it. That's why I have it on the screen. All I've done is ask simple questions. He refuses to answer, and hopefully, if he's blocking me now, he'll stop trying to confuse me for other people and get threats sent my way. That said, as we've seen in recent news allegations of him violating copyright law, people blocking him doesn't seem to do a whole lot with that. So let's go ahead and switch this over to Adobe. Okay, so to start off with, I'm going to quick touch on the letter part of it that the judge was talking about. And that is here where the court looks at the past criminal history to determine what appropriate sentencing is. It appeared that, or from the state's original recommendations, they were referencing everything under I, which would be if there was no record. The judge, for some reason, did the sentencing for the 15th, judged based on an H grid. It really didn't change anything because of how small the sentences are at that level. But then between the 15th and the 22nd, because this was a second event, everything got bumped up to A because of the variety of felonies that were committed on the 15th. So, going back through the list here, okay, so count 1 was the attempted assault 4. The state had asked for 6 months, and the judge gave 90 days. So that's a reduction, but that's already time served because almost all of these run concurrent or at the same time as other charges. In this case, they basically almost all run concurrent of count 5, the assault 2 against Jason Britton. Count 2, the first unlawful use of mace. The state asked for 6 months. He was sentenced to 180 days, which would be 6 months. The third one, attempted assault 2. The state had asked for 30 days. From what I followed, the judge assigned it a 7H, which would have been 90 to 180 days with 3 years of probation. And 3 years of probation is what the judge sentenced. I didn't hear anything about prison time for that charge. Count 4, unlawful use of a weapon, was documented as a 6H, which also would have been 3 to 6 months, and was given 28 months of probation. This could actually be under the post-prison supervision, which is why on 6H it's 2 years. Count 5 was a 9H, which normally you'd be looking at 37 to 38 months, or just a little bit over 3 years, but because this was a Measure 11 charge, that's why we have the 70 months here, with 3 years of post-prison supervision, and as they clarified at the very end, the $348 for restitution, for medical expenses. There's no emotional damages or anything like that. There is still... it's currently in a stay status, but it's supposed to be coming out around the end of the month on a civil suit that Jason Britton filed against Alan Swinney. That is for $200,000 and could go back and be adjusted or revisited based on what happened here today. See, charge 6 was the assault against Meg McLean, or Meg Stewart. Was not guilty by a jury, so we don't have to worry about that. Count 7, unlawful use of a weapon. Now this, because we start looking at charges from the 22nd, that's why everything all of a sudden got bumped up to the A section on here. That one was... So, I think I misheard on that. I know I just deleted that one from the chat, but I'm actually going to... I'm actually going to comment on that one, Farley, or Brandon, because Mr. Swinney has already agreed to a settlement in the civil case where he admitted to the assault and battery against Meg. So you can say that she's lying. It doesn't change the injuries that she received. It doesn't change the death threats that she's received. It doesn't change the fact that he admitted in court to, or he stipulated to that condition as part of his settlement. Again, yeah, he may have been found innocent about the charge of assault against her, but there was still the unlawful use of mace against her. So on the unlawful use of a weapon charge, I have in the notes that they were asking for 30 days, but I thought the judge said 30 months as a 6A. And I think that may be the difference between where the state was originally looking at it as a 6I and the judge was looking at it as a 6A. But because it's concurrent, it's not going to really change anything because that 30 months runs out before the 70 months from the assault 2. On count 8, we have the unlawful use of a weapon with a firearm. That one, the state asked for 50 months consecutive to count 5. So the state wanted him to serve the 70 months from count 5 and then start the 60 months from count 8. Actually, Tess, he did take the offer, and it was stipulated in such a way that they're not going to put any kind of lien against any property or finances or anything, and it was made very clear through to everyone in the court that was watching that he has no intention of paying anything. And as Meg has said several times since, she wasn't trying to get money. It wasn't about the money for her. It was about the accountability for what he did, which when he finally got indicted by the DA, that basically sufficed for what she was primarily wanting. So yeah, there was, okay, so we have the charge 8. The judge did say 60 months, but did 10 months of it concurrent with count 5 and then 50 months consecutive. So this does seem to shave almost a year off of his total sentence that the state was looking for, which I've estimated to put him looking at release at about November of 2030. Count 9, menacing. A 6 month. The state wanted 6 months. I believe that's what was given. 10, pointing a firearm at another. The 6 months. I think she said they were waiving the $500 fine. Unlawful use of mace 2, again 6 months, and that's what I see. And then assault 4 for 6 months. I believe that was also. Basically, the state got a significant portion of what they were looking at here. This interstate compact, for those who don't know, an interstate compact is basically a set of legislation that different states sign on to allow them to work with each other. It sets up frameworks for working between different judicial systems. When I've worked with people that have been dealing with dependency and custody issues, you see that frequently when you have like one parent living in one state from another parent, or if custody was established in one state and then somebody moves and now an issue comes up where you need to relitigate custody, interstate compacts come in to have a framework for how you handle the jurisdiction and everything on that. And just going from what I heard here in the court, it sounds like there were questions of either this being a new program or new restrictions looking at residency requirements dealing with probation. And there could be a possibility that when he gets released, or even if Texas has the means and the desire to, potentially transferring his incarceration to Texas, so that, because he does have a lot of family that's still in the area, as opposed to ideological supporters and not much else up here in the Portland area, it could be better from a rehabilitative and restorative standpoint for him to be closer to his family where he's got better connections. We will have to, kind of see where things go with that down the road. While it wasn't stipulated here, it definitely sounds like the defense really didn't like the idea of combining, or of treating the two sets of events as separate days for sentencing. as well as they still have questions about the validity of Measure 11 with the transferred intent. And for those who don't remember, that was where on the 15th, Allen pointed a paintball gun intending to shoot at someone that he said was coming up behind Jason Britton in a way that caused Allen to fear for himself, and he shot, did not hit the person he was aiming at, and hit Jason instead. So the defense's claim was that, well, he didn't intend to hit Jason, so he shouldn't be held to this higher standard for assault too. But what the jury ended up finding was what they call transferred intent, which was he intended to shoot someone in a manner that would be consistent with assault 2. He just hit the wrong person. And that's why that ended up sticking as a Measure 11 charge. And like I said, there are still a couple of civil cases outstanding. We don't have any timeline yet on when any of them are going to be seen in court for hearings next. But they are on my list of cases to watch. I've actually got a whole list of them that I'm getting ready to kind of, as best as I can, set up alerts to keep an eye on. And that's going to include checking to see if any appeals do get planned on this case. I think if there were any, I don't know that it's something the public defender could do. And by all accounts, Mr. Swinney has not had the funding for his own legal defense, or else he would probably have still had the Oliveros Law Group like he did in the beginning of this. So yeah, that was my interpretation of where we're looking at with this. There was a question from Tess before on Twitch about what was I think it was something about the civil case, but I want to double check. Do you remember what that was about, Tess? If you're still in the chat. Oh, okay. I found it. I had to scroll further back in the chat. Yeah, there was a whole debate going on about what happened to the GoFundMe money. That supposedly the person that was facilitating the fundraising did inappropriate stuff with the money, but then that person has come back and said that they handed over all the money, and I don't know. I try to stay away from that drama. That said, I did find yeah, we were at the time we were talking about Meg having been in the chat last night to talk about her side of things, but that she wasn't going to be here today. Again, with her case, basically what had happened was she had been out on the 22nd. She's told me she lived in England for a number of years, and yeah, they have their own political nuance to worry about. So she's not she wasn't as informed on American politics until she came back to the country and was living in Portland, didn't really know what was going on. What she said in the trial was that she came out to observe to get an idea of what was going on. And by her testimony, Alan just shot her with no provocation. There was a contention because the pictures of her coat that had the paintball splatter, it appeared pretty clear that it was a yellow paintball splatter, and by everything that was submitted as evidence, Alan was firing green paintballs that day. The state said that the only other person there that day that had a paintball gun, the gun was jammed at the time, so he couldn't have been the one to fire. But that wasn't enough to get past reasonable doubt for the jury, and that's why there wasn't a conviction on that. I think an argument could have been made that a different color got mixed in, but we'll never know. But there was also that same day he also did attack her with mace, which was one of the mace charges that he did get convicted for. And it's been the response from his supporters that I think some could say might have been the most damaging part. And I'm sure some of them are still here in the chat, but when she talked about getting the death threats and such, that is, I get that people have different views on how things should be and everything, but I'm at a loss for words on that, really. So yeah, that's... Okay, so the other paintball was shooting pink. So, yeah, again then, where did the yellow come from? That sounds like it means somebody had an extra color mixed in, whether there was one still in the hopper when pink and green paintballs were added, or there was an odd color paintball in the bag, which I don't know manufacturing of paintballs, but I imagine between the making the paintball and it getting put into the bag, mixes can happen, I would think. So, but in a criminal trial, you do need to get beyond a reasonable doubt, and the wrong color was reasonable doubt. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I was obviously not on the ground that day. Actually, that wasn't long after, if I remember the timeline right, that was just after my injuries from cops. So I was, and also Saturdays I'm usually busy with my weekly Pathfinder game. So I'm way out there. Yeah, he says that, but one of the witnesses from the trial was Chris Bailey, who said that he was donated the paintballs and turned around and gave them to Alan, and that they were bags of green paintballs. Uh, Full rev. I know you're asking for your reporting. The judge said 60 months, but 10 of it was concurrent and 50 months consecutive. So essentially 50 months plus the 70 from count 5. Yeah, perjury is a thing that happens. I've witnessed it firsthand, and it's. I think it's one of those things that happens more often than we like to admit, because in a case like this, all you can do to refute that is to present evidence of showing why the person lied or how the person lied. And it would all come back to you need proof of Allen firing yellow paintballs. Actually, I really don't expect that we're going to have the paperwork from the defense in here yet, but it wouldn't hurt me to check really quick. Just check the court docket and see if anything new has been submitted. Oh! Well. Okay. We don't have the defense's response to the sentencing memorandum, but we have the state's response to the defendant's response. Yeah, the whole thing with the donation money, I am far enough away from it that I really don't know what was happening there. Yeah, as far as how long of the sentence he's going to serve, he could, the judge did say that he would be eligible for work credits or good time or good behavior or why did this chat freeze? Second. Oh, good. I think we got that one now. Yeah. So we've got that. We've got possibility of parole, things like that. I don't. Those are areas that are outside of what I would have any idea of. This document I'm looking at cold here. Yeah, state's response to defendant's sentencing memorandum. So the state and the defense both submit memos saying, supporting their views on why, which is where the defense tried to say that it shouldn't have even been assault 2. It should be, I think they were saying assault 4, which would basically have been able to set up for time served because it would be a 1-year sentence. And he's been incarcerated for just over 14 months now. So saying does not establish any irregularity occurred or that sentencing him is constitutionally impermissible. The claim that mandatory sentence under Measure 11 for Count 5 is not cruel and unusual punishment. Yeah, he was trying to litigate after the fact that he was not, as though he was not convicted of assault in the second degree. And this was something that Mr. Westover brought up in the hearing here. He references where the Court of Appeals, which is usually very good case law, saying the assassin who lies in wait, harboring in his bosom a murderous design to slay a human being, cannot extenuate his offense because he did not kill the particular person he designed to. All the circumstances constituting murder in the first degree are present, and if he is guilty at all, he is guilty of that crime, and there is no more reason for lessening the degree of the crime in consequence of that circumstance than there would be in acquitting him out and out. This was referencing State v. Wesley in 2013. Again, I mean, the only difference is that was murder 1, and this is assault 2. Apparently the defense tried to cite a couple other instances where the judge increased sentence, but then the Court of Appeals said it was disproportionate, but it appears that was because the judge went off of the sentencing grid. State v. Simpson had some abuse dealing with underage victims and said that it was disproportionate because of the age of the victims. Yeah, during the trial, the defense was making a lot of moves about trying to get a mistrial if certain things happened. And they may try for an appeal, but there needs to be a failure or an error in law of how it was applied for that to happen. And it seems like they didn't make a really good case as it is, much less, to make it at an appeal level. Hello there. Without his flawed and unfounded transmogrification, love that word, of Count 5 from assault in the second degree to assault in the fourth degree, no comparison holding in Coke. Transmogrification is an amazing word. The people of the state of Oregon have determined that a conviction for assault in the second degree carries a minimum 70 months. And that is, there's been a lot of debate lately about the appropriateness of Measure 11, but it was put onto the books as a ballot measure, and it does require for any changes to administration of it requires a 2/3 majority in the state legislature, and removing Measure 11 would require another ballot measure, which has been tried several times in the past, but has not gotten to the point of being able to happen. there have been some renewed pushes for it again recently. Especially in light of how Measure 11 ends up being used disproportionately against minorities, and all it seems to have done is not address violent crimes, but just increase the number of people that are in prison. This doesn't look good. Defendant next makes a perplexing argument in his sentencing memorandum that the state's evidence impermissibly varied from the indictment when the state advanced the theory of transferred intent. So he's trying to get the court to overturn the jury on the assault 2 charge. And apparently what makes this one so weird is the example that he used was a time when the question was raised to the judge before the jury came back with a verdict. In fact, here the state actually makes a note saying, such an injury could satisfy the legal definition for serious physical injury, thus making defendant's criminal conduct more akin to assault in the first degree, which would have been an even higher sentence if that had happened, but it also would have had a higher burden of proof, or a higher standard for it, which would have been harder to convince a jury of. So Mr. Westover says the state made false representations and previously made inconsistent arguments trying to say the crimes occurred over more than one episode. And this is something that I've seen him bring up several times before during pretrial hearings, where Mr. Westover said that in the grand jury, the evidence was improperly given out to separate what happened on the 15th from what happened on the 22nd, and the idea that a grand jury would not be able to separate the two events in their minds. I see here, its original intent was for who strangled their partners. There was a special situation clause. I do not know. Yeah, this if you're talking about Measure 11, I mean there's a whole variety of crimes that are covered in Measure 11. I do think strangulation is one of them, but I don't know specific instances that are referenced at the moment. So yeah, this whole time, Mr. Westover has been trying to make claims that this should have been done as two separate trials, one for the 15th, one for the 22nd. It should have been two grand juries, one for the 15th, one for the 22nd. And every time he's tried to bring these arguments up, judges have not been persuaded. So this was a rehash of something that he's been trying to do before. Okay, back with the transferred intent. It looks like the state actually looked through on a national level trying to find references to transferred intent being used at a trial phase when it wasn't used at an indictment phase. And it looks like they weren't able to find any reference that would support Mr. Westover's view, and they've got a number of cases here. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 10 cases that they listed that all support the idea that transfer intent could be brought up afterwards. Yeah, 2001 Court of Appeal said defendant has not cited, nor have we found a case in which the doctrine of equitable estoppel has been applied against the state so as to bind a criminal court at sentencing. So again, he's making these claims way too late. Yeah, arguments that, foregoing the idea that the state could have hid that they were trying to treat these as two separate events. I never had that impression from any of the hearings I sat in. Defendant in his memorandum misconstrues the state's argument the defendant had a consistent motivation and intent to participate in violence based on his desire to engage in a civil war with the left. Yeah, him as a domestic abuser. I have heard things like that from people that knew him in his past. To my knowledge, nothing was ever reported. And that's not something that would be my place to report on, without the victim giving their okay. But that is something that I have heard about. He has had, I believe, several divorces in the past, and I think that had to do with some of it. Hopefully, that could be something that factored in with PTSD. Maybe he'll be able to get assistance with retreating those conditions, and I try to be hopeful that there is a way to come out of this better than he was. I can do this all day. I really need more memes I can just toss up on the screen. So yeah, it looks like the defense, when I'm reading this, was trying to make it sound like Alan's whole goal was to do crimes, and because of that, every day he was out was the same incident, and that's not how that. I don't. I don't know of a way that could really work, but this is why I'm not a lawyer. And there was, as part of setting the grounds for his for the sentencing investigation, there was some form of a mental health evaluation done on Alan. Obviously, those records we're not going to see. Those are going to be private medical records. But we do know, based on statements given in court before, he does have a VA disability. I've heard it said several times now that it's about $400 a month that he receives in compensation, which, as a disabled vet myself, I know that that would equate to about a 30% disability. PTSD, 30%, that's not unusual considering the circumstances he was in the Gulf War. Mental health is one of the things I have disability for. I think mine's actually rated higher, but that's neither here nor there. So he's had the diagnosed history. One of the problems that we run into now is prisons are not very good at medical care and mental health care. He's probably now going to be getting ready to get transferred to actual state jail instead of being held at Inverness, where he has been. And the state prisons have, they've been devastated by COVID. They haven't had, there's been the issues of lack of vaccinations, lack of social distancing, lack of appropriate care being available, and I think even when we're not in a pandemic, mental health tends to take a back seat. I really do hope, if he's seeking assistance with whatever he's got, that the system doesn't fail him like it's failed so many others. But, he needs to want to do that. The system needs to be able to allow him to do that. And then go from there and hope it works. So yeah, that's about where we are. Did anyone else have any other questions about this, or any other things that I might be able to talk about or discuss? If not, I'm probably going to get ready to shut things down here and wish everybody a good day, and hopefully you all have a good weekend and great holidays. Yeah, it's one of those things, this could be, it's part of the question that I had when Mr. Westover was giving his briefing was, he brought up a lot of evidence about how YouTube, algorithms and everything have been radicalizing for him. And this is a perfect time for him to work on that and get de-radicalized. Prison is also a place where you can get further radicalized or radicalize others, and it's going to be up to him what he wants to make of this. So, yep, sure thing. I'm definitely, again, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully everybody has a great rest of the day, good holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you might celebrate. And Take care.